structures. I'll just hand it over to you, Amy, and we'll get through this and have a look at
Kira, thank you very much. Kira, good afternoon, everybody. Further to the council meeting on 10th of December, when you determined your committee structures, you undertook that you would like to come back at the 6-month point to just review how those structures were working, given that at the time of determining your committee structures, the world was rapidly changing around local government and regulatory reform. And that's still a feature of the landscape too, I might add. Nonetheless, we've made this commitment, so it's a good opportunity to check in. The committee started in earnest in January, so we're noting that they've all got a slightly different meeting cadence. We've got various experiences of how those committees are working. So today's the opportunity just to check in, find out what's working well, what's working not so well, get any suggestions about improvements that we could be making, and take any other direction that you might wish to give. So in your pre-reading, and given that you've already had it once, I wasn't necessarily expecting you to read it all again. There's the LGNZ document, which we workshopped in November, that talked about what makes good decision-making structures and why government structures matter. So I'm just going to do a really quick whistle-stop tour through those things, just to sort of anchor us into the things that matter prior to getting your feedback. So our committee structures matter because fundamentally everything that you do in local government requires a decision, and as well as things like good information, the way in which your decision-making structures are structured can also influence the quality of the decision, and we want to make sure here that we have good decision-making. Good decision-making in our context means that as governors you're focusing on the strategic issues, the major issues that matter to the community and for the work that we do, and that it's also open and available to the public. Decision-making structures exist on a continuum, everything from, fully centralised to fully decentralised. So we are operating currently in an environment where the council body retains all of the decisions, but the mahi is delegated to various committees. And there are a number of things that the LGNC says, are important to consider when you're reflecting on your decision-making structures. And I won't reiterate those. You can see those there. They were in your handout. So there was various options as to whether you govern alone. That means that council meets and council takes all the decisions, or whether you meet and delegate the mahi but not the decision making to the committees. Different pros and cons of each, and we traverse those. When you're governing alone, you typically require other committees. You still require a risk committee, you still require a chief executive's performance review committees, and sometimes you need committees which come together at short notice to deal with topical matters. It ensures that, and we've talked about this before, that there's no information asymmetry because everybody's involved in the decision making, but it can be onerous and time consuming, and you don't always get the opportunity to discuss things in depth. Whereas when you are working in a structure that has committees, it tends to meet more of the principles on the previous slide than it would if you were governing alone. helps to manage workload, although that might not feel like it at the current point in time. We talked earlier today about how busy it is with everything that's going on in the reform space, and it enables more efficient use of time. It does, however, require a little bit more coordination and administration. So this is our current committee structure, and that is the thing that we will be discussing today. If you need to keep a copy in front of you, I think there's a copy of the slide in your handout, because I'm just going to jump straight to the next slide and start asking the questions. So I'll just get you all to maybe take a couple of minutes and, because I don't have much, and reflect on the, I'm not going to get any sticky notes out. We'll just, you're a small group, we'll just have around the table today, but just reflect on what's being asked there, what's working well, what's not working well. Are there any adjustments that we could be considering that could improve effectiveness? And again, reflecting and thinking about how the committee structures currently have, so I'd like to anchor it in that, support the decision making and the work that you're being required to do. And then we'll grab 5 minutes at the end. We'll leave the other question till last. Are we all doing a little bit more time, or we need to start into the conversation?
Oh. Yeah, but others might want more time. Maybe could I just offer a few observations before we dive into the detail of the question response?
Righto, yes.
And I'm just reflecting on when we sat down shortly after the local government elections to have this conversation. I would just observe that I recall we agreed that if we were going to make any changes to the previous regime, that those changes should be relatively modest, because we were confronted with a fair degree of uncertainty with local government reform announcements and other reforms occurring. So there's a sense that if you're going to make changes to what we previously enjoyed, don't change too much. And I think a key change we made was moving to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee and making it a whole council thing. I was going to observe that as we go about the business of managing things for our region as a council. There are these broader influences that influence how we do our work. There, some of those play out on an annual cycle. A year where we're doing public consultation and preparing an LTP and doing consultation, that's quite a different year to the non-LTP years, for example. There's also influences that play out at a triennial level. So government policy pivots have an impact on what work we do and how we go about doing that. And then there's other influences that play out beyond the triennial. You know, if you think about our own Southland Water and Land Plan, I think 9 years to work its way through the Environment Group. So that a multi-triennial influence at play there. The reason I'm saying this is as I reflect on strategy and policy versus the ICM committee, as we've experienced in the 6 months to date. An observation, and this is not a criticism by any means, the strategy and policy committee meetings, if you go through the agendas and look at the recommendations associated with each agenda item, it is predominantly receiving reports. There is not a lot of decisions asked of us as a council in respect to strategy and policy. In contrast, for the last 6 months, I suspect more decisions have been asked of us in respect of ICM committee agenda items. The observation I'd share on that is that that might reflect the current environment we're working in, because there are a bunch of things that you might normally have expected to be a decision that is put to S&P, but because central government has stopped a bunch of stuff, it is highly likely, or it could be potentially be the case, that what we've experienced in the 6 months to date of this council is not reflective of what you might expect a steady state. Where all this is leading is maybe it's simply too early to tell if there should be any adjustments made. And maybe what we're experiencing now, maybe 3 years from now, if something is still using these structures, it could have actually a very different experience if a different central government policy settings were in place. So I'm just sharing those really broad observations because in terms of what we currently think might be working well and what not be working well, I'm just observing that it's kind of dictated by the wider set of weather systems that are influencing how we do our work. I'm not sure if others have a similar perspective or would disagree with it, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Some feedback. I guess I'm new. Probably had only 3 meetings of some of the committees, so still coming to grips with it. As far as having everything go through council meeting, that would make no sense because you've got no time to discuss it. And I think there has been some stuff at times, so Kanoa would be an example that could be in several committees' reports, and somehow we don't want it fragmented. We need the information together in one place. So there is things like that doesn't help our understanding to have it broken up into separate committees where you've got to go to all of the committees to get the information. So that's one thing. The annual plan, it actually allowed us to have quite good debate and then still deal to it today to meet a time frame. And yet, if we hadn't had it out in the committee, then goodness knows where that would have landed. And probably lastly, flexibility around being able to ask questions and priorities to get things done, not being too hard and fast that you can't do this here because you've got to wait 6 weeks for another committee. So, it's just having the opportunity to deal with issues before you actually make a final decision in council. So I think that's all working. But as far as whether some need the rules tweaked, as long as there's flexibility in there, but allows us to have time and get more information before a final decision is made, then I think it's reasonable. And too early to really, I think it's too early for me to actually say this committee needs to, because I haven't seen many meetings.
Can I check in, councillor, and then just ask a related question? So, and around the flexibility, is the use of workshops and briefings supporting the work that the committees are doing in terms of enabling some of that flexibility, acknowledging you're not making decisions in either of those contexts, but you might be traversing information that might lead into a decision?
Some of the workshops have been really good and others maybe not so much. I think I am getting the feedback from others and feel it myself. There's a lot of time, and so prioritising so that we're just making sure we're all coming away with something. Rather than just running through a status quo type thing, here's the actual, because we've maybe had enough of the briefings on things, and now we need to come away from each of those workshops with some new information or new context to take to a meeting rather than just telling us how it works here. So it's about our time, really. I think it seems to have grown quite a bit, and you want to be here for every meeting, but just have to reflect on when you're having a workshop it's not just telling you what's happening, there is something new to be gained.
Yep.
What's working well, I think the things that are working well with it is that the reports that we get to read are very good, extremely good. What's not working so well is the reports or the questions, how that meeting is recorded or what we're getting out of it. In other words, the questions that are asked around the table sometimes don't get reflected in the outcome. And probably the one that I sort of look at reasonably closely was the questions on Kanoa. And also questions on the basis of iwi contributions. And that was brought up in the meeting, but never came through in the report from that meeting. So, and also the other thing that I feel isn't working well, it might be just my simple brain, is that if we have a report on something, I'm going to take Kanoa because it's in my head. The report to each committee has to be the same, rather than taking individual bits of it. And that's following on from what David's saying. Put the full report in every committee, then there's no room for ambiguity. So we want the same message to all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just check in on that, because so I'm hearing and I understand that, Kanoa in particular is very important to this council, and we need to make sure that everyone's across it. I'm just reflecting what I heard and just picking up whether there's a duplication issue, whether, if we've got the same report going to every committee and the terms of reference are all different, are we doubling up, and are we going to end up in a situation where some people are hearing the same thing multiple times without the added value and the channeling on the focus of the committee, rather than the problem that I think we're trying to solve, which is, back to Councillor Rose's point, should that particular subject be going to different committees, and how do we find a way to balance that sort of that duplication and the focus of the committees with the desire to have an overall picture?
I think, you want me to reply to that?
Oh, it's a general open question, so I'd like to respond to answer.
Well, I guess my response initially would be that if you have it too fragmented and only this bit here and that bit there, you end up with gaps.
Mhm.
And when you end up with gaps, you feel like, well, you couldn't ask it in this committee, and you've got to go to another meeting to pick up another bit of it, and it's not taking us forward. So it doesn't worry, on something that's so important, it should have almost had its own committee sort of thing. But if you haven't got a complete thing of it, then when it's such an important subject, we could drop the ball easily. So that's more up, and it wouldn't worry me if it was duplicated, but then you are focusing on a particular facet of that report. But we just can't afford to drop the ball.
And it would be your choice as to whether you keep reading it 3 or 4 times.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair. Similar to David, I'm relatively new to the committee structure, but meetings seem to run pretty smoothly. And I guess in terms of that thinking around, whether there's duplication of items across committees, to me that seems really inefficient. And I think we need to have our chairs probably put their heads together and come to consensus as to which committees house that and hold the whole thing, particularly with regard to Kanoa. I think there's a real risk that if we spread it across multiple committees or focus on one part of it in one committee and another, that it just becomes a bit fragmented. And I think we're much better to have it in a cohesive in a central location, I guess, or in a single location. I think maybe one area, are we focusing on just what's working well in this conversation? Is that the
I think we'll take all comers because I think we're,
Yeah. Something that I think maybe we could consider for making improvements is that, having that alignment between chairs in terms of what's going in which, and there is a bit of overlap, so I think that's just a communication thing. And if it's a committee of the all, it probably doesn't really matter that much which one it goes in, but that it does go in one, and obviously it comes back to the full council. When it comes back to the full council, I have observed that we deal with those recommendations quite quickly sometimes, and we don't have the resolutions stated in the adoption. So in terms of that, actually everyone who was not involved in that committee's recommendation having the visibility of it, I do wonder if we need to think about how we can open that a wee bit and I guess create the space to reconsider anything that we may, given the period of time that's elapsed between the recommendation from the committee coming to the council. And further to that, I wonder, I guess also, what do you call them? Portfolios. I think there potentially could be a case for some portfolios being used, or perhaps just using councillors as the spokespeople for some issues. And I guess I could, by way of recent example, we've seen a sort of ongoing dribble of, and some of it has been rather drivelly, reporting on the nitrate issue. And I think my sense is that a lot of that could be put to bed quite quickly by the council addressing the issue fairly directly in the community, and I guess acknowledging the anxiety that it possibly creates in the community, but also where we're at in terms of information ability to apply policy interactions to it, or solutions to it, and perhaps taking some of the angst out of the whole conversation. There may be other examples there. That's me for now.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's time we have a reflection like this, but I just follow on Phil's comment to start. The big picture ahead is where we end up and what structure we're in. I think the most important thing now is we can isolate structures that we can put into whatever shape the new organisation is, so that the work gets done. In terms of where we are now and what needs changed, I approach it from this point of view. What's not working? What's broken that we need to fix? And I measure that by saying, are there some things we've neglected and not noticed that have gone past us that, just sitting here for the last few minutes, can't think of any. are there some things we've had to go back and correct that we haven't done as well as good? And you might say, well, yeah, we just had a motion earlier today to change what our rates should be structured at, but I would regard that more as work in progress than actually getting it wrong. And my big observation about all of this would be I've seen flawed structures work very well when those that are involved come with a desire to make it work. And I've seen perfect systems flawed by people who want to rot it. And I think our attitude coming here and making sure we're prepared and focused is probably more important than the structure. Well, let's go back and finish where I started. What we need to be doing now, rather than getting too focused on something which is only going to last 2 years at most, is saying, you know, what do we need to protect and take forward into a new structure?
A couple of things. Just an observation that we've got, as we've all talked about, our operating environment's been upside down. It's a complete utter change. And I just, I'm wondering whether you thought about where, if we need any focus, how much focus do you want on that area? That's one thing. What's the other thing I was going to say? Something, yes, Councillor Roy makes a really good comment, which is broken, but also we're putting enough focus in the right area. I'd encourage you to ever think about Canal. Actually, where does the council want that piece of work to be governed from in terms of looking at detail? I think I would encourage you to have a good think about that. We've done some work with Bruce Robertson and Robert Buchanan that's coming to you shortly. I might help inform that. And you've got some priorities you identified. So a good time to review and to have a look. And I'll just leave it with you.
Yeah.
So one other thing. Sorry,
We're tending to each other.
Just around the nitrogen thing. We're taking advice from our comms team around how we respond to it. It's not as though we're sitting there not aware. I'm bloody wounded every time I read it. But actually, the comms been saying, Rob, don't feed it. Don't feed it.
Yeah.
So I'm ongoing conversation. So I don't want you to think that we're not doing it because it's bloody abysmal and it's impacting on a couple of my key staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Linda, with your point, did I miss someone?
Morris, did you want to say anything?
No, I know.
Okay, that's good.
I know, I'm happy.
I understand.
I've got a page full of random notes, many of which are not connected, so you just have to bear with me. I think that there's a lot of this is working really well, actually. Well enough. The terms of reference are pretty clear, and perhaps if there's any weakness there, it's that we don't link the papers that come to each committee to the specific term of reference. And I know I've spoken to Hayley about the strategy and policy ones and requested that actually in the paper there's a section that highlights the relevant term of reference so that the linkages are clear across at least this committee, but it'd be good if it was right across so we can see. We also need to keep in mind that the whole of council committees, Stratton, Pole and ICM, are only that. They do not have any delegated authority currently. And I'm not sure I'm advocating for this, but it is a possibility that to reduce repetition, one or both of those committees could actually have delegated authority to make the decision. And looking at the attendance at S&P and ICM, they're pretty much everybody comes to those when they have to. So that's a possibility for the actual decision being made at that committee. I just think it's worth us considering. I'm not sure whether it's the best way, but I think we should have a look at it. And on those lines as well, we need to be mindful that we are operating above an operational structure. And so if there were to be any random, even well thought out changes, it affects the operational structure beneath those decisions. So the important thing for me and for staff, I'm sure, is that those pathways are clear and easy, and there's no weird grey areas for staff either. One thing I would ask perhaps, and it kind of is a reflection of what Alistair and Roger were saying earlier, the recommendations that are on the reports, even though sometimes it's receive the report and acknowledging S&P receives a lot of reports, sometimes within that there's a capacity for a more clear direction to council, especially as it comes up through the conversation. You can't expect staff to anticipate everything, but I think there's potential for some of those recommendations, receiving reports, conversations to actually produce a recommendation to council from some of that, rather than just let's talk about it and receive it and then nothing actually comes from it. Do you know what I mean? So if anything, the responsibility of the chairs and deputy chairs to have a talk about that with the GMs and see whether the recommendations can be, and if we decided at a committee meeting that a recommendation, we want to form a recommendation, then we should do that. It gets a bit messy with, all the, what are they called? Not the code of conduct, the other thing. Standing orders. But we are, I was going to say casual, but no, not casual. But we are free enough, flexible enough to do that. So I think that's an opportunity for us to explore actually as well. One other thing I thought of just now actually was when a question comes up at a committee, would it be possible for the answer to that question to come up at either the next council meeting or that next committee meeting, whichever comes first? Because as you say, Amy, our committee meetings are, on different timelines. So rather than something that comes up at S&P, have to skip a council meeting and then come to the next S&P meeting, maybe there's a way that could come to the next decision making or discussing thing. I don't know. These are real logistical things. So, what else do I have? Also mindful that the government announced recently that the voting rights for external appointments is, changing. So just questioning whether we've had a look at how that affects the Risk and Assurance Committee and the Investment Committee in particular, but it also might impact our mana whenua reps too. So I think that's all I've got. But generally, I think it's quite good. John and I have been trying to get together to talk about crossover between ICM and Stratton Pole, but we just haven't managed it yet.
I was going to say, just in terms of that proposed change to legislation, we haven't got the detail around that yet, and so we're conscious that that's coming, and we're not, you could assume what the implications might be, but until we actually see the detail of that, it is going to impact several of our committees. And so when we have more information about the detail proposed in that legislation, we'll come back, because actually it might be an inflection point for some of our committees. We might need to think about how we operate them differently, or we might not. So I've got an action that when we get that detail, we'll come back for a discussion with you on that.
Sorry, just one other thing, to Councillor Rose's point about the briefings. Just wanted to check that you're saying that actually you feel like you're up to speed enough now that we can, unless it's a new thing, the briefings, which were predominantly to help us all, because, you know, we can't remember everything, but predominantly the new councillors, you feel like you're up to speed with pretty much everything and we can carry on.
I think the thing that happens, which you see in council papers, there's so much detail in them, it gives you a fair overview before you get to a subject anyway, so maybe we don't need to have all that detail to have it in the paper as well, so. I think. Do you feel like that, Roger?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with where they're at, but I don't feel a huge desire for new briefings.
No.
Yeah.
I think the update is just in that wee part, I'll say my 2 cents worth. Yeah, like I think it's great when, especially with S&P, where they go, we just want to see where it's changes, you know, give us the, what's changed, and that's where you generally focus, because you don't really want to read everything again and again and again. Now, just little, you brought up a couple of things, and I'm always looking for efficiencies. And in regards to, we have 2 committees that are full councils. Why can we make decision making on those committees?
You could, I would recommend that you did that in an informed way, and I'm not informed enough to inform you on the implications of that right now. But if you want to explore that, I can go away and find a brief briefing or a brief workshop for you on that, if that was something you wanted to.
It's quite a significant change.
Well, it is, but then again, it's all the council discussing thing, everything. Everybody agrees to something, you
I
go.
think standing orders has also got something about notice of a motion being a period as well, whereas if something came up at the meeting that didn't have the notice for people, you might have to adjust standing orders as well in that regard.
Yeah, okay. No, I mean,
Yeah,
just tease it out.
fair point to discuss.
Yeah, no problems. No, sorry.
I was just going to say, to my mind, it would depend on how important the item is. So if it's a minor change that you can just do, that's fine. But if it's something like the annual plan, then time to reflect and have that.
That's why you have the notice.
And in regards to what we're probably Phil's and Eric's comments, there's so much going on. We don't know where the election is. If it's going on 90% right, it's not trying to don't reinvent the wheel here at the moment.
Fix it.
Broken. I mean, we can always tweak things and piece, and I'm probably actually saying timing of meetings, and I'm just looking. I'm even looking at management, Stratton poll on 2 separate days. We're all here for we're 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then that's the big day of full committee. I know it's a big day, but some of us doing big days anyway. So, but it would free, and then you fill in the rest of the day. Well, it's a big day anyway because we've got a briefing for the rest of the afternoon after S&P. So we were saying, well, concentrate on that day. That's your 20 days. There's lots of briefings that bits and bobs that you fit in. It's managing the meetings, I suppose, and that's probably what we're getting. Some people were saying, hey, the diaries fill up, and I mean we've got other. I suppose I'm getting off in regards to the committee structures and things like that. But I wouldn't be rushing the reality, and Rob's probably brought up that there's other things going on there. Maybe we need groups talking about the amalgamation things and major, and whether we need everyone in the room, but actually do we need a committee to be able to, what we're dealing with the mayoral forum, how we we can get a briefing after this, what we're trying to do. But is there actually a bit of a structure there needs to be put in place to be able to deal with that? So, I think I should be one. Deal with it all in one committee, and then asking the questions. It's all very clear. Everything being the major thing, we want to make sure we get right, practical. Whether there's anything else on the practical and infrastructure that needs to be in that committee as well. But the ultimate is we don't know what the next 6 months are going to be like, or what it's going to be looking for next year. You may get into the next year and you go, there's a decision made, we're all going to be one unitary, and you should be talking to all councils, get committees all lined up. So that, you know, the councils are starting, is there certain committees that should be aligned in same terms of reference if you're starting to merge? You don't know where that's going to go in the future. So, but we don't know. We don't know. So I wouldn't be stressing about changing too much at the moment.
Correct, don't think so.
So I'm just, yeah, sorry, Morris, and then Alistair, Morris, Alistair, you're first.
Yeah, well, I've been here for about 3 days, I think. Rob, you mentioned before the new environment is, are you meaning that interaction between us and the government, or the vacuum that's there, or just how we are operating in our own little council?
So this is the point I raised, just so I'm clear what you're talking about.
Well, you point, yeah, it was a wee while ago, but it takes a while to get your question across these days. You mentioned before in the change, I'm just giving Jeremy here. You mentioned before in the changing environment.
We've got a changing operating.
Yeah.
You know, we've got local government reform, we've got local government commission, and a new planning regime.
Yep.
Coming in us, and so actually our world's been turned upside down. So do we need to create some space where we have a focus on that change that's going on?
That was the bit that got me upside down. Instead of information going back up to government, it's all coming down, was where I think.
And be told what to do and where to sit and how high to jump.
And how we fold our arms.
Yeah. So the question was, you know, would you, I suggest you have a think about how much you want to think about that, and just, I guess, I think there is an appetite for increased flexibility, noting that, you know, where do you want to focus? Have a think about the other thing to have a think about, you know, are we supporting the committees with our papers? You know, do you get, if you've got information items, can they be dealt with in other ways? Can we just circulate the information items? You know, if there's no decision needed, questions, you know, don't expect an answer now, but if we want to make them as business-like as we can, you know, how do we, and you know, I guess you can use a defence analogy. If we were under attack, how do we organise ourselves? You know, and I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but
you can lead us.
We are under attack.
Well, and so how do we best navigate these rocky waters in the government setting? How do we navigate these rocky waters without?
Well, I don't think the structure prevents us from doing that now. When COVID was on, we got a sudden message, we need to be ready to do shovel ready. And we did it like that. And, you know, I think we can kind of handle it. I don't see any blemishes there, that if we come with the right willpower, we can't do it. I go back to what Phil said, and I said, the big game in town is making sure we take the right stuff into the new structure. And that should be our focus rather than fine tuning now.
Morris.
This is going back a bit now. I do think we're getting enough information though from Jeremy about what's going on, and when we get to the August, the cut-off date, we'll have a definite decision, I imagine. Either we go for the unitary or we muddle on until the next election. So we sort of a bit hamstrung by that process. But that's not what I was going to talk about. I was really following up on what Roger said. No, I think what other people said too was about reporting back to the council. So the committee chairs, it seems to me, and I don't think I've been doing this well enough, need to report back to the council and say, right, this stuff we talked about at the Finance and Performance Committee, in my case, these items were, a bit contentious, and this is what the decision was, and that's why we made the decision. So perhaps expanding that out a little bit more. I think you might have been saying that before, Linda, as well, rather than just sort of glossing over and rubber stamping it, making sure that the people that weren't there, understand it fully, and if there's any further discussion that might be needed, then that should be allowed for. Might extend the time of the council meeting out a bit, but we'll make sure that what went on at the committee meetings is, fully understood by everybody.
I mean, we can do that. I mean, that's very good point.
That's just on us, right?
Yeah, that's up to the chairs to do that, so. Oh, good. Phil, got that battle plan, haven't
Yeah,
you?
having achieved some broad things in response to the questions, I've got a few thoughts. First one, just to note, the Targa Regional Council have moved to a portfolio-based approach. Speaking to their deputy at the Local Government New Zealand conference recently, Zone 5, Zone 6, suggested to him how it would be cool to get an Otago researcher to write up a research report on what have you learned from moving to that. He was excited at that suggestion and said he was definitely going to follow up on that. So that'll be a resource that won't be available to us immediately, but it'll be interesting to see what their experience with moving to portfolios has delivered. In terms of coordination, I think we need to continue investing in coordination between the chairs of the committee meetings. We have started that, and we just need to keep that up. And in response to Rob's comment, when you are on defence, a key requirement is to increase the level of communications between those different people involved in the defence. So I see that as quite important at the moment, is keeping that chair of committee coordination going. I do wonder if local government reform, in response to Rob's provocation, is to make it very clear that I would expect SNP to pick up the local government reform material and the decisions that are going to start flowing from this point forward. That would be the channel for that to be managed, I would have thought. In terms of Jeremy's comment on striving for efficiency and delegating decisions down, one observation for me is that from a public participation point of view, public are more likely to pay attention to council meetings on the expectation that that is where the decisions occur and the decisions that affect their lives. And so if you were to delegate, there's a potential for members of the public to have to, one, they would have to pay attention to more committee and council meetings, and two, they might miss some stuff. So I think there is utility in reserving decision-making for full council so that the public get greater opportunity to make sure they don't miss stuff. Final point is on workshops, and it's around workshops have been good. They've allowed us to explore ideas, share thoughts, generate some guidance for staff as to how the council is thinking about certain issues. Where I think there would be a value add is if it would be potential to capture at least the raw artifacts or data that are generated in those workshops and feed them back to us in a timely manner in order to do two or three things. First of all, it triggers reflection. Going, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I need to pay more attention to that way of thinking about the life. It can prompt our memory when we come to briefings and or decisions in council meetings. We can go back and I can see where this has come from. I can track the evolution of this line of thought. And I, when I work in this job of facilitation, and if I do workshops and capture post-it notes, I try within 48 hours to turn around the raw data, email it back to all the participants. Whether they engage with it or not, it's up to them, but I don't want to be the one who's standing between them and thinking more deeply about what they've discussed in their workshop. So I think if we could somehow get some visibility of at least the raw data, not necessarily the analysis that staff do, but at least the raw artifacts that come from those workshops, that would be really helpful. Because I've occasions taken photos of post-it notes that we've captured. I've not seen anything until the next time you meet it as in a council meeting when you get a decision on something. I'd really like Eric's point that attitude is the most decisive thing to success in all of our committees, and I would take that forward and remind everyone of that on a 6-monthly cycle. That seems really important. And just checking my notes, the final one was measure twice, cut once. And Simon Upton referred to Chesterton's fence yesterday, saying don't move the fence if you don't know why it was put there in the first place. The idea of measuring twice, cut once, I think our committee structure means that we get to measure it twice, once at a committee level, and then second time it comes to council, and the cut is the decision that the council makes, having had that 2 bites at the apple to make sure they understand the issue and get an appropriate decision from it. So I think that's possibly useful to keep in mind, is that that's what our current system seems to do for us. We get to measure twice and cut once when it comes from all the teams.
One of the things has already gone out of my brain, but the second thing, it's nearly also gone. This is why a long day does not help. Invercargill City Council have, what did you just say, Phil, about?
Chesterton's fence, no. Measure twice, cut once, workshop, artefacts, local government reform.
The first thing I was going to say, the measure twice, cut once. Perhaps there's an opportunity there for some AI assistance, and the LGNZ trial that they did at the zone meeting with Contented, I want to say, might be a good opportunity for us to try that out. I've used it outside of the local government space a couple of times to test it out. And once it gets the hang of your conversations, it's really good and can generate some really targeted outcomes. And so perhaps AI is an opportunity, and that Contented, because it's a local government initiative, there's a possibility worth exploring for those fast turnaround.
And some councils are currently using it, so we could benchmark or draw insights from them.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what the other thing was. It'll come to me at some point and I'll interrupt you.
Can I just, I think I'll cover a point that I think it's anticipating what Linda was going to say. Maybe not. But that point about when you're on defence, what are some of the things? There's another idea that I had the other day. In the Defence Force, when you are defending across a broad front and a particular battle formation is planning for that defence, what is the most common and expected practice is you exchange liaison officers to your neighbouring units, and they give you a liaison officer in return, so that you understand, I understand what these guys are doing, and I understand therefore how to make sure that my defence aligns with what they're doing, and we don't have really obvious gaps for the bad guys to exploit down the middle. How does that apply to us? I was reflecting the other day that maybe there's utility in us exchanging councillors as liaison to our neighbouring TAs as they are considering their strategy, their annual plans, their LTPs. Maybe their LTP is more important. If we had a representative from Gore region sitting in on their LTP workshops, and they had someone sitting on LTP workshops, that would reduce the chance for surprises to emerge, and there'd be greater alignment, which leads into or should support better outcomes for regional spatial planning. So that exchange of liaison is something that we don't do currently very well, I don't think, and we could explore what that might look like.
Very good.
I have remembered, if I might.
Aye.
I just wanted to remind everybody that we are really fortunate that even our formal council meetings are not as formal as some of our TA colleagues. And so we do actually, and you have to watch a couple of them to realise that they stick very, very closely to the standing orders, and you can only speak once, and you can, if there are 3 people who speak in favour of a motion, then there's nobody else against, then that's where they cut the conversation off. So although we might get frustrated by our own council process, I would just remind us all that actually we're really fortunate that we operate the way we do, as respectfully as we do, and as kind of fluidly as we do, because otherwise our conversations would be much briefer and much less fulsome.
That might be better.
Well, it depends what you wish for, right?
Sorry, I'm just nobody's else got anything to say. I'm just getting a feel with you.
Yeah, can I just summarise what I've heard, just check back in, and then we can finish. So maintain the status quo, but have a think about where Carmel is going. There's a question mark about whether you want to do whether you could go to different views, whether, and the chief executive encouraged you to think about whether you need something separate for local government reform or whether it goes through S&P. There's some hygiene matters in terms of templates, trying to get the week with meetings sorted, thinking about workshop notes and how we process and deal with those recommendations and reports, et cetera, and how chairs reflect back the recommendations. We're in a full council meeting, so there's an opportunity to discuss more fulsomely the recommendations and the discussions that were made in committee. Slight difference of opinion potentially around delegating to committees that are of the whole. Do you want me to shape something up?
It doesn't worry about it, no, I'm not too worried.
We've
Just a question
canvassed it, that's sufficient.
Fine.
Waste your money.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm gonna stress about that, so
thank you very much.
I think that's pretty good. A lot of unknown out there, moment. Unknown out there. Weird
Could
direction.
we implement quiz events to test that councillors have done their reading ahead of?
Only if it's at the northern.
I'll call it a close then.
Well,
Thank you very much.
that's-
Thank you. Little stuff. So we
Yeah.
battle plans.
An appropriate answer is more likely.
Can't beat a good battle plan.
Oh, no,